to David.
Four scores of 7 years ago. That is the most famous line from the most influential speaker of all time. The quote was taken from one of the most quoted speeches of all time. The speech was given by one of the greatest presidents and one of the greatest speakers of all time. That man is Abraham Lincoln. We are first going to tell you why we chose him as our speaker and what is the significance of his speech, the Gettysburg Address. Second, we will tell you the types of communication concepts he used, and lastly, why he inspires us. We chose him as one of our. We chose him because he is one of the most influential speakers of all time, one of the most influential speakers to ever exist. He abolished slavery. He got America through the Civil War, which is considered one of the greatest internal crises in the country. We chose the Gettysburg Address because it's one of the greatest speeches ever, and it proved very effective. It was a speech that only lasted a little over 2 minutes long. It is significant because it told the people to move on from the Civil War instead of dwell on it and continue to ruin the country. The speech brought together both sides, the Union and the Confederates, and it called an end to the war. Even though he lost the war, Abraham Lincoln still found the positives in the war and told the people that since the war is gone, they can move on to greater things.
Now that we've discussed why this speech was so monumental, I would like to go over some of the techniques that Abraham Lincoln used in the Gettysburg Address to inspire his people. One of the things that Abraham Lincoln used on his November 1863 speech to dedicate the field as a cemetery was his use of parallelism in the sentence structure of the 3 paragraphs in the speech. Each of these first sentences have the same number of independent and dependent clauses and commas, and when you're hearing the speech, it signals the transitions between the different parts, and also it provides a dramatic effect. Another thing that Lincoln uses is pathos. Pathos being an emotional appeal. He uses it when he refers to the dead soldiers that gave their lives that day. He does this to gain credibility towards the cause to which these soldiers died for, and also for credibility towards himself as the speaker. His use of diction, which is the word choices in which he chose to use in that speech, shows the serious nature and how much he cares about the country and the soldiers' sacrifice. The speech itself is persuasive simply because his first purpose is to dedicate the field, but his secondary purpose is to use the sacrifice that the men gave to persuade the people into believing that victory is possible. And he does so in a very unique and proper way. And what makes his speech so great is that he emphasized the healing of the country and working towards the ideals laid out in the Declaration of Independence, as opposed to the other speakers that day who use words like Civil War and dead. He tried really purposely to avoid those words. In his speech, he directly alludes to the forefathers in the 407 years ago. Our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal, to show what his purpose is in this war and why we've entered it. And the very last line of the speech shows that it's persuasive because it says, "This nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, for the people shall not perish from the earth. And so Lincoln, instead of choosing to be hateful and be angry about the 23,000 men that died that day, chooses to emphasize bringing the country back together. And now I'd like to give the floor to Scott.
Thank you. Third, I'd like to talk to you about why Abraham Lincoln inspired us and why the Gettysburg Address inspired us. Lincoln's ability to speak inspired us because of how committed he was to perfecting his public speaking skills. And this quote here from showcase.net and .net. He spent many years polishing his speaking abilities from his youth to his presidency. His life in politics gave him hundreds of opportunities, as did his 25-year law career. And he knew that he would have to be doing a lot of public speaking, especially with the law career and job in politics. So he knew that he would have to make it as perfect as it could possibly be. And second reason is inspires us because even throughout his longest speeches, he captivated his audience throughout the whole thing. His speeches never got boring or dull, or like we learned from Millie and Jeremy's group, dumb even. So he always kept his audience captivated. He always used profound words, and he was very eloquent in his speeches. This is a quote from Louis Gottschalk in Notes of a Pianist. Lincoln is eloquent in his own way. He can speak a long time and utter no idle words, which just reiterated what I just said. And many of his contemporaries, which would be fellow lawmakers, politicians, diplomats, soldiers, lawyers, cabinet members, and reporters, and White House visitors, had a very high regard for his speaking ability. And we all know that it's very important to have not only the respect of your audience, but also the respect of your peers as well. So, as a conclusion, I would now like to talk to you about recap some of the main points that our group and I went over. We talked about why Lincoln was significant and the significance of the Gettysburg Address, some of the concepts that Lincoln used and that we still use today, and why he inspired us to become better speakers as well. So hopefully we have helped you understand what a good, great, powerful, influential, and captivating speaker Abraham Lincoln was. And thank you. Have a better than average day.